Yeah, so thank you all for having me here to be a part of this. I'm really excited, and thank you for letting me do it virtually. I really appreciate that as well. I'm excited to be part of the entire event of Women in Data Science Everywhere, and particularly be a part of the Livermore event, because as you'll see, like, Livermore is definitely like near and dear to my heart. And I think in general, Livermore has done a fantastic job of having, they're kind of at the forefront of having amazing female leadership in computer science. And just, I think they've really, paved the path in that direction. So I'm excited to be even just a part of this lineup, and look forward to talking to you all. So as I mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. It'll be more fun if it's more of a conversation anyway. So definitely feel free to jump in at any time. I wanted to start, I'll touch both on career and kind of the research we're doing, kind of just to give you some orientation of who I am, what I'm excited about. I wanted to start off and explain, I'm incredibly passionate about how we use computing, how we use personalized medicine to improve our ability to find, to track, and to treat human disease. In my research program, we're trying to do this mainly by developing personalized digital twins. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. And I kind of just want to touch on, I'll give you a little bit of the perspective just to give you context of, the things I'm excited about and the research we're doing, touch on the career a little bit, answer any questions you may have on that end, and then I'll give you more details about our research more at the end of the talk as well. So when I say digital twin, I think it's good to just get a visualization and an idea in your head and kind of build intuition of what do I actually mean by a digital twin. And this video that I'll show is actually a little bit old. We created this back in 2010 when we started doing the work, back when I was a graduate student. And it gives you an idea of what we mean. So what we're trying to create here is a personalized model of someone's vasculature and personalized non-invasive representation of their blood flow. So here, what we're getting is a geometry, and this is zooming in on someone's coronary arteries. And this is showing the 3D anatomy that you're getting from a CT scan, from an MRI scan. We can recreate three-dimensional geometries from 2D angiography. So any kind of routine medical imaging, we're creating these three-dimensional anatomical views specific to that patient. And then we're using that as input to our high-resolution physics-based simulations to create these high-fidelity models of a patient's blood flow that allows you to identify, what is their current, what are, different markers or phenotypes or measures at that current state, but it also allows us to determine how might they respond to certain drugs, how might they respond to certain treatment options, how is their state going to evolve or be affected by potential future physiological states. And it provides this essentially digital twin of the patient, so we can see and get a sense of what is going on non-invasively for that patient. And I'll touch more on how we're using these and what we're doing to develop these digital twins towards the end of the talk. But just wanted to kind of build that intuition of what we're looking at and what I'm excited about as I kind of go back to what my career is and how I've gotten here. And I think it's helpful to see, it kind of puts this in context of, we start. This is just, my career in one slide. I had one of my colleagues had put one of this together a few years ago, and I think it's a good way of kind of representing quickly where I've come from and how I've gotten wherever I am. And you can kind of see, I started at Duke. I went to Duke for my undergraduate degree, and you can see that balance from the beginning of I'm really excited about using first principle models, going down to like the underlying physics, coupling that with computational science, coupling that with the computer science side of it to answer biomedical questions. And you kind of see this dichotomy throughout my career. I started out in undergraduate studies with this double major in physics and computer science while I was working in bio labs. I left undergraduate and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I applied to many graduate PhD programs at the time. I also was applying to jobs, and I got an offer to be a software engineer at IBM to go work on their Blue Gene supercomputer. And that sounded amazing. And, it was a really good opportunity to kind of marry these interests. So I went to Rochester, Minnesota, and I worked on at IBM as a straight software engineer for several years. And it was it was a great opportunity for me where I I had never heard of parallel computing before this. I didn't actually know what a supercomputer was. And it kind of exposed me to all of that and helped give me a much stronger, build my computer science skills and give me that base to go forward and build other projects in the future. But while I was there, I got very excited about what we could do with the supercomputers versus just building the supercomputers, which made me interested in going back to graduate school and trying to get more involved with the application of these systems and how, the computational science side versus just the straight computer science. I went back to Harvard, received my PhD in applied physics, but you'll see the continued parallel of I had my master's in computer science, my PhD is in applied physics. But at the same time, I spent my PhD building a code that we call Harvey, which is named after William Harvey, who's the first person who figured out that blood actually circulates through the body. And so we were always trying to take this physics-based approach, marry it with large-scale computing, and answer biomedical questions. And I think it's worth pointing out as I go through this, I put my personal kind of timeline at the bottom as well. And I think especially in these talks, it's always important to kind of see how that lays in. And I am happy to answer any questions as we go through, how work-life balance and we have 3 kids and we had that on the tenure track during the faculty and during COVID and all of those fun things. So I finished my PhD at Harvard, and then I was incredibly lucky to get a position at Lawrence Livermore and return to Lawrence Livermore as a Lawrence Fellow, which is this amazing postdoctoral fellow program where you actually get to lead your research yourself, and it's an independent position that allows you to apply for grants and set your agenda and lead your research program. And at the same time, I actually worked part-time at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and was actually and Livermore was incredibly patient with me and helped me organize this, where I'd spend 2 weeks in California, 2 weeks in Boston, and kind of did that for the entire 2 years that I was at Lawrence Livermore, getting the experience where on one hand I had amazing cancer biologists and the cancer side at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and had like those collaborators. And then I was physically in person to collaborate with them and then go back over to Livermore where we had, some of the best computer scientists in the world of how do you actually use these large scale supercomputers. So I was able to kind of bridge both of that and like actually bridge it physically and be on both sides. After I finished my time at Livermore as the Lawrence Fellow, I started my lab at Duke. I started back in 2015 and have been at Duke since then. And I kind of put some of the key moments in the career of our lab of, we had our first paper in 2016. I had my first NSF career, or my NSF CAREER Award. Our first big NIH grant came in about 2019, 2020. We've now started having the graduate students, we're having our first PhD students graduate, which has been very exciting. And alongside this, you can see I have twins that were born in 2019. I have a 5-year-old that was born while I was on the tenure track. That's kind of, where kind of a quick overview of where I've been. And I presented a slide like this recently to some senior graduate students, and it made me realize, and I kind of wanted to pause and point out as we're going through this. And I don't know, I think we have a lot of people on this, attending this event that are at different stages in their careers and are at different points. And I think it's always important to point out here that, this looks kind of, it looks very linear and it looks like a straightforward path, but kind of acknowledging and pointing out that, each transition here, it may not have been as smooth. It was very stressful. It was difficult. While I was trying to do this, I'm trying, I have a husband who has a PhD. And for me, one of the biggest challenges was how do we solve this, 2-body problem and make sure that neither of us feels like this, that we settled or that we're the trailing spouse or, we're both feeling fulfilled in our career, and kind of balancing that at each stage was something that we dealt with a lot. And that was one of the challenges through my point. And I just kind of wanted to always make sure you're pausing at this and saying, if you're at any of these stages and trying to figure out the next step, if you're feeling stressed, if you're, feeling a little overwhelmed, that is normal. And I'll get it to some advice that I've had, but I would say at each stage, mentors have played a critical role in really helping me get through each point, figure out options, and feeling comfortable to reach out to people. And, we have where you have the speed mentoring later, there are a lot of resources for trying to get help and going through each stage. I think I've been presenting this following the slide, and I think it's interesting to see if, from a personal standpoint, especially in this women in data science side, the increasing power of the computation from, what I've experienced has drastically changed the kind of science that I've been able to do. When I graduated from university, I had only run on one processor. I had never taken a parallel computing class. I didn't know how to run, I'd never done anything beyond one processor. When I worked at IBM, I was able to work on, at that time, the biggest supercomputer in the world. We had created the Blue Gene L. I joined like right after Blue Gene L took over as #1. So we were able to run on about 65,000 processors. We had mornings where we would come in and like the system was put together at Livermore, and we would try to, it was a great opportunity to come in and just get to boot the system and see the system boot up and be able to touch 65,000 processors. And it was something, we all got together early in the morning to like have that opportunity just to touch that kind of system. And it was always just, very exciting as we move forward. I was very lucky to go to the ULISH extreme scaling workshops as a first and second year graduate student, where we were able to run on the entire system there of 300,000 processors. And that's what led us to do the simulation that you watched the video from. We were able to do the coronary modeling with the 300,000 processors. In 2015, when I was back at Livermore, we were able to use the Sequoia system. We all then ran on Vulkan, and we were able to go up to the 1.6 million processor and kind of scale beyond that. We're now part of the Aurora Early Science, and we're able to actually, change the science we're accomplishing based on this, advances in the algorithms, advances in the computing. And I think this kind of gives a really direct view of what that impact has been. The picture in the top left is from our 2010 Gordon Bell finalist work. And that shows we were able to accomplish then. And that was the first full heartbeat at cellular resolution just in the coronary arteries. And then in our 2015 work, we actually moved to this, the full body, and moved to the systemic scale for the first time. I think it's worth pointing out, and it's interesting, but especially I noticed this week as I was putting the slides together and preparing for this specific talk, and I realized that, as a community, we have come a long way. Women are having, we're seeing a lot more women in power, and we're seeing we're seeing a lot of women getting a lot of opportunities. And while we've come a long way, I also noticed that maybe the arrow wasn't as necessary as it needed to be to point out who I was in this presentation, or in these pictures. And it is, we have come a long way. But at the same time, I can easily just put up these pictures and say, oh yeah, I was the female at each of these events. And I didn't even realize at the time, but now that I look at it, it's like I was actually the only female at all of these events back in 2009, 2010. With the point being, like, we're making progress. I think it's getting better now, but there's still a ways to go, and we're still addressing all of this. So leading into the idea of, what are some of the lessons I've learned over the last few years before I dive into some of our research itself. And given today, and kind of especially the lineup, I wanted to really focus on the role that mentors have. And I would say for me, mentors have played a really critical role at each stage of my career. And I wanted to point out here that I think when we think of mentorship and we think of, who are like your critical mentors, you often think of like your PhD advisor or people that you have ongoing relationships with. And I think it's important to call out the impact that small moments and small points can also have. And the idea of, just having these role models and being able to look at leadership and see people who look like you, whether it's, underrepresented minorities or females, or seeing that you can make that, you see people who are similar to you in these positions of leadership is important and is memorable. And some small interactions can have a big impact. And the one I wanted to mention and talk about was in 2011, I was a graduate student doing an internship at Livermore. And I was there as a computational science fellow, which is this great DOE program, and they bring in, they allow you to do a summer internship at some of the DOE labs as part of your program. So there's probably, I think the summer I was there, I don't know, like maybe 5 to 8 CSGF fellows at Livermore at the time. And I think some of the things that stuck with me from that summer, when you looked at the leadership, I was in CASC, I was in the computing role. You had amazing role models like Trish and Lori Dyson and Donna Crawford were all in leadership positions at Livermore National Lab, right, where you have like, this is like, you know, you have the biggest supercomputers in the world. It is one of the strongest computing entities, and their computing directorate is being led by all of these strong female role models. And that was incredibly powerful to see. But not only that, they took the time to interact with us and actually cared to know where we came from, what we were doing. And they, like, specifically, Donna came and wanted to meet all of the CSGF fellows, and she was really interested in learning how we got to where we were. And that was, it struck a note with me because she didn't just want to know about the research I was doing at CASC at Livermore and, you know, what did she pay me to do that summer? It was, she asked us all to give presentations about how we got there. So she wanted to know what classes we took in high school, what clubs we were in, like who you were as a person, and actually took, you know, to go through all, like, it was like probably 6 or 7 of us. It took several hours to go through the presentations and really take the time to learn, you know, how did someone get excited about computational science? How do we increase that pool? What do we do? And having someone like Donna take that kind of interest and care about us, like, you know, this was over a decade ago, and I still fully remember just preparing the slides, being excited that someone actually asked and someone actually cared, and she took the time to really meet with us. And I think, you know, it's not always just these long-term mentors, but like the impact you can have with taking an interest and, you know, how to affect people in their careers and, you know, being these strong role models, even in these, you know, acute instances. And even, you know, as I came back at Lawrence Livermore, when I was a Lawrence Fellow, this kind of continued. We again, like, we were a finalist for the Gordon Bell in 2015, which was, you know, a big deal for us as a team. And the leadership actually took us out for dinner to celebrate. So Laurie Dacian and Donna Crawford like took our team out for dinner and like celebrated that we had actually gotten there. And having these little, you know, just saying, you know, we see you, we're aware of it, and we support it and are excited, and did that in their own time outside of work, really meant a lot. And I think making sure you're, you know, you're supporting the rest of the team is incredibly important and memorable, and has an impact on the way. I other you know, lessons I kind of wanted to mention is, I think I'm still struggling with this, but, you know, I think you hear it all the time, but make sure, you know, learn to say no, and learn to say no without apology. It is okay to be, you know, overloaded, not be able to take on more. I think oftentimes the females are asked to take on more service activities, asked to do like it, you know, feeling comfortable to say no to doing these activities, and don't feel that you have to apologize for it. Learning how to trust your team, how to delegate with your work appropriately. I'm showing a picture of all the females that have been a part of my team in the last 8 years here at Duke. We've been incredibly fortunate to have just fantastic women as a part of our research program, and it wouldn't be, you know, anywhere near it where it is without all of these a lot of these females kind of pushing it forward. When I first started at Duke, we had a team of 1 male postdoc and 6 initially it was 6 undergraduate females, and then we had 1 research tech join that was a female as well. And it was, you know, we were fully driven from that side, and it was exciting and great to kind of see that kind of that interest and excitement for this type of research. I think it's important to learn to communicate your needs and advocate for yourself. One of the examples I keep using for that is I did have twins while I was on the tenure track. At Duke, you get a semester off of teaching for every pregnancy, not for every kid. And my twins were born in October, which, if you know, puts it in the middle of the semester, meaning I needed to come back and would have been required to teach come January when the twins are like 2 or 3 months old. And I also had at that stage like an 18-month-old, and it was a lot to kind of take on. I was feeling very stressed about this. And I went to a women's lunch, and the women's lunch, the other female faculty pointed out that, you know, I could ask for help, I could go talk to the chair, and this, you know, that they could do things to try to help alleviate it. And the women at the faculty lunch actually helped me and like took it on themselves, and like they went and like talked to the chair for me. So within 3 hours he had called me, fixed it, and he had the ability, instead of having it be, you know, a Duke approved side, the chair could have that flexibility to say, you know, giving me an extra semester of teaching relief for the spring semester, which was incredibly helpful. Ended up being very, very helpful, as that then went into the, and that would have been spring of 2020 and went into COVID. And having that extra time off to, you know, to handle adjusting to a family of 3 with, or a family with 3 kids with the 2 young twins was incredibly useful. And I didn't even know, I didn't know I could ask for that. I didn't know I could advocate for that, and kind of learning what you can ask for and to communicate when you are stressed about something and what your needs are has been incredibly important for me. Identifying your passion and aligning your goals and making sure that there are many activities and things you can do in your job each day, but don't forget why you're there. Don't forget why you chose this profession. Identify what it is you were passionate about, what drew you to it, and make sure that your goals are aligned with it and you're actually getting to do the part that you are most passionate about and you are excited about every day, and that will help make things a little easier. And then obviously the step outside of your comfort zone and try different things. So I'll try to jump in. I know I'm running a little bit fast, so I definitely want to leave time for us to talk. So I wanted to give you a little overview. I'll give a kind of fly-by-night of our research and what we're doing. I am giving a much more in-depth talk at the Institute for Data Science at Livermore next week. So if you want more details, definitely tune in for that. But I wanted to just give you the overview of how we're using large-scale data coupled with this idea of the digital twins, the physics-based modeling, to try to drive changes in healthcare and improve our ability to find, track, treat disease. And one of the key examples that we keep using is that we've shown that you can use these digital twins to replace things like invasive measurements. You're seeing this already in place today. There are FDA-approved tools that are in the clinic being used. So currently, the standard of care, if someone has chest pain, they go into the clinic, they'll go to the cath lab, and the cath lab will actually put a guide wire, which you're kind of seeing here, in their coronary artery. So you'll invasively have a guide wire placed in the artery. You'll have that narrowing that's causing and leading to that chest pain. It's called a lesion, and that's what you're kind of seeing with the yellow. And they'll measure the pressure before and after that lesion. And it's that pressure difference that they use to determine if you are or not going to have a stent. So it's the pressure gradient. If it's above or below 0.8, will be used to determine if you are going to have a stent, if you need to have an interaction and you need to have intervention. It will be driven purely, one of the main guiding factors is this pressure determinant. What we've shown and what other groups are looking at is how do we actually use digital twins to non-invasively measure this metric. Sorry. So yes, I'm giving the seminar, so you should try to join for more details. So we're trying to show that you can use digital twins to alleviate the need for the invasive guide wire, and we can non-invasively get these metrics using the combination of CT scanning, MRI scanning, getting a patient-specific personalized 3D anatomy, running the flow simulation, and abstracting what these measures are going to be. We've shown in a 200-patient trial where we've worked with Duke University Hospital and Brigham Women's Hospital up in Boston that you can actually achieve, you can get beyond the FDA target, and you can replace these guide wires with these non-invasive digital twins. This type of technology is very successful for accurately calculating quantities like the pressure gradient. For us, we've shown that we have an average error of about 6%, and that includes the complex lesions. So if you have a lesion that's at a bifurcation, so like a Y junction, areas that would conventionally, like types of lesion that would conventionally be left out of these types of trials, you're able to assess accurately with these high-resolution digital twins. And what I think is even more interesting is that we've shown you can get flow metrics that might actually even improve the diagnostics. So as I mentioned before, you have that cutoff of 0.8, and if that pressure gradient is above or below 0.8, you determine if you get a stent. But what if the person's at like 0.8001 or 0.81, right at that borderline in what we call the gray zone, where you're not sure, like maybe they wouldn't conventionally have gotten a stent, but they really should have been treated. And how do we really identify those patients and better inform treatment plans in that gray zone? And what we've shown is that other characteristics you can get from 3D flow simulations, like quantifying disturbed flow and vorticity, are actually highly indicative of adverse events for those gray zone patients. So you can then say, not only, are you above or below 0.8, but what was your vorticity level, and use that potentially to guide the treatment in the future. So we're really excited about the potential for getting these new metrics and identifying different phenomarkers, different ways of stratifying these patients and improving doctors' ability to identify these patients and guide their treatment planning. Beyond that, we can take it kind of the next step of trying to figure out what is the best treatment for that patient. Can we improve treatment planning on a patient by patient basis? We've looked at immersive, we have virtual reality based tools, augmented reality based tools as well to make this more intuitive for the doctors. But you can do things like modify the degree of stenosis for that patient, try placing different types of stents. For pediatric patients where we want to place a shunt that's connecting two different parts of the vessels, we can put the shunt at different angles, try connecting different vessels, try different material properties, try different shapes of the shunt, and really tune the treatment planning before the doctor ever steps foot into the operating room, allow them to determine what is the best option for that specific patient and drive their drive their decision making and support their decision making in this process. We're coupling this with machine learning, and it's kind of I don't have a lot of time to go into the details, but in the nod to the data science side, there's a lot of data here. Where the need for the surgical planning to be real time is critical. They want, the doctors need to be able to try many different options, get immediate feedback. They can't wait even half an hour sometimes. They can't wait an hour to try, each different option as you then go and run these large scale simulations. So we need to find ways of augmenting the large scale physics-based simulations with the machine learning to get real-time feedback for these physicians. And that's one of the things we're working on in our lab. It brings up a lot of computational challenges. We're working with all different levels of computing throughout the DOE system and around, through federal options, as well as some cloud distributors, trying to determine, how do we handle this level of data? And there are lots of questions that come up, but, right now we are creating large scale physics simulations that take the entirety of the big supercomputers, and then they have to run for long periods of time. So, one of our grand challenges, we'd love to move from a single heartbeat metric to pairing the data with these wearable devices, moving away from a single heartbeat metric to let's get to a week, let's get to a month, let's see what your blood flow is doing and how long you're spending in these adverse conditions or in these different states. But to do that, we're going from, each simulation takes all of the memory on the entire supercomputer. So we can go up to, there's petabytes of memory per time step, and you're running millions and millions of time steps. And it is now, fully intractable to download the data, do any post hoc analysis. So we're working with different teams throughout DOE to try to create in situ visualization and in transit visualization, but also in transit and in situ machine learning training. And how do we really make use of that data while it's in memory in the simulations so that maybe you don't have to run all of the simulations in the future? It's important to do, to focus on portability and all those sides. And we want to, develop machine learning surrogates. And there's a lot of opportunity for data scientists to really advance this work. And I'll end with, kind of tying back to our overarching goal is we're trying to create these digital twins to improve our ability to, what we've shown here of finding and diagnosing these patients. I haven't even gotten into some of our tracking of, we're interested in seeing how cancer cells move through the body, identifying regions where you're likely going to have sites of metastasis. How do we couple this work with wearables and track a patient's hemodynamic profile over time? And we really want to move from this, discrete time points of finding the disease, improving our ability to track it. And then we want to, our long-term goal is to improve treatment. We want to improve, acute treatment planning, get real-time feedback, immersive feedback, and ways for the doctors to, improve that treatment before they step into the operating room, but also identify patients and figure out in the long term, over the next 6 months, if you were to have this specific stent and maybe exercise 20 minutes a day versus half an hour a day, or, whatever we need to give the patients information, how do we improve and maximize their best chance of a high potential outcome? So I know I'm running up on time on there, so I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions. But definitely, thank my team and say that all the work we're doing is it relies on many different people coming together and is they all play a critical role in getting this to happen. Okay, sorry. Do I have time to answer a question? I just saw that there's a question in there. Do I have a second?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the talk. Is there any questions?
Yeah, there's one in the, I put one in the chat. I don't know if you can hear me. I'll just read it. Work-life balance is hard. Do you approach it day by day or look at it long-term? How do you make time for research, family, health, students, non-work interests, and regular life stuff like the dentist and groceries?
No, it's hard. I'm still figuring this out. I think it's incredibly difficult. I would say, yeah, we do basic things of like, we have groceries delivered or we do pick up now. Like we do not have, we don't, try to minimize time on that. A lot of it has really been putting boundaries, and I'm still learning and I'm still trying to do this, but I think it's in the like trying to say no of, the kids are the most important and the time with them, I'm saying no to a lot of talks and like, dinner engagements and things that are in the evenings of, I am there to help put the kids to bed, which is important, but also necessary when you have three kids that are that young of like, my husband cannot physically put all three to bed at the same time. So it's, trying to figure out like, what are those boundaries and setting those boundaries and staying to them. We will once in a while, we kind of negotiate how much time. I'm limiting travel at the moment. I think, until the kids get like slightly older, it's like, you can only give so many conferences you're able to go to each semester. How many as we're interviewing lots of people here at Duke now, that there are lots of dinners. It would be great to be involved, but I can't say yes to all of these, and trying to figure out, what are important. And on that end, I'm traveling for the first time and giving a talk in the next few days, and like I'm getting in at 1 a.m. so that I will be there to take them to dance class on Saturday morning. And it's like trying to figure out like where is that line and how do you balance it? I would say I'm probably not great. And sorry, I'm thinking I'm like my hobbies may not be as great at the moment, but it's a lot of it is like just, communicating with my husband and working with him and making sure we know what is important for each other. And like he is incredibly supportive. And like he has done things like we had a project in my lab where we're working on like ventilator splitting and trying to do stuff to help on the COVID side. And like my husband actually took vacation days to watch the kids so that I could, we both agreed that this was an important project. And he like took vacation days to help support and make sure I actually had the time to do it when we needed it and when it was critical. And kind of figuring out what's important to both of us and balancing it and working together as a team has been incredibly important for us.